be wearing that, dude. Honor the past. So never forget you could call this one here, and I know some of you have heard parts of this before. I've added some things to it and whatnot, but I never want to forget where this country comes from. And since the video is going to be done on Memorial Day, so it's a perfect fit that way, but since I'm not going to be here next weekend, I wanted to get you guys in on a Memorial Day message. But the world today, so I'm going to do a lot of reading here because I got a lot of words, but you just kind of sit back and hang on. The world today, including this country, seems to be hopelessly spinning out of control, doesn't it? Hopelessly spinning out of control. It just really has that vibe. You remember when you were a kid at the playground, the old merry-go-rounds they used to have? Trevor, you remember what a merry-go-round is? Yeah? I'm not talking about the one where you're going up and down on the horse thing like that. I'm talking about the one where the little ones in the playground, where you try to stand in the middle and you get them things cooking. If you're in the middle, it's not too bad, you're going around. But you're on the edge out there, it's like, ooh, you're just hanging on to the bar, you know? And you're doing pretty good, and all of a sudden you got the high school bully, Tyler. I'm not calling you the high school bully, but I can see this happening with Tyler to Josie, where he gets on there and he says, you like to go fast? Well, I'm going to go real fast. And he's just whipping around and he's swinging that thing like that, and the kids are just hanging on, and stuff that happens afterwards isn't always so pretty, especially if they ate right before that, but you just kind of love that. You just kind of love the feel of that. But you know, I think the big bullies are spinning this whole world as fast as they can right now. I think she's the forces that want to just throw out common sense and morality and history are just flinging it as fast as they can, just trying to confuse people to get them mixed up. They don't know what's what anymore. And that's kind of a sad state of affairs there. They want to shape what the young generation learns and believes this country to be. They want to teach that she's not good, but rather fallen and evil. It's true, it's happening. She may not be perfect, but I believe she's the closest thing to the face of it on God's green earth, folks. America. I, for one, am very thankful for the freedom that she offers. I hope you also, after hearing today's message, come away with just a greater appreciation for the sacrifice made by millions to purchase the freedoms that we enjoy. So some of this may be repetitive, but I tell you what, it better be so repetitive that you know it. So you can't let somebody erase it out of your memory or erase it out of your history. We have awakened a sleeping giant and filled him with terrible resolve. That's the words spoken by Japanese Commander Yamamoto after they bombed Pearl Harbor. We have awakened a sleeping giant and filled him with terrible resolve. America is a good country built on godly principles. Her foundation is good. She doesn't go looking for a fight, but I tell you what, you back her into a corner, you're going to get one. Memorial Day is a day specifically set aside to cause you to take time to remember. Hence the poppies. That's what the Ladies Auxiliary and went into runnings there a few days ago or whatever, and she just got her little money basket right there, and there was 2 gals right there, and I said, I'll take a poppy, ma'am. And she goes, well, are you in the service? I said, boy, you know I missed it. And she said, you missed it? I said, well, there wasn't anything going on when I was there, and it was kind of a peacetime thing, but I said, my grandpa was World War I, my dad was World War II, my brother was in Vietnam. She said, well, welcome aboard. Said, my husband and my son were both Marines. Hoorah! They just love it. Then I go over to those over there, and there's 2 gals and 2 guys, husband and wife, sitting there with the poppies. Why are they doing that? Causing you to remember. Remember what? What are they giving poppies out for? It's a time for a dad or a mom to tell their son or daughter what this thing stands for. It's not just some little gimmick, somebody looking to make a few bucks, selling M&Ms someplace. No. It's about something a lot greater than that, folks. More and more, many in this country want to erase its history, so that's why we're going to rehearse it again. Memorial Day is an American holiday observed the last Monday of May, honoring the men and women who have died while serving in the U.S. military. Originally known as Decoration Day, it was originated in the years following the Civil War. The Civil War, which ended in the spring of 1865, claimed more American lives, military lives, than any conflict in U.S. history, because Americans fighting Americans, and required the establishment of the country's first national cemeteries. By the late 1860s, Americans in various towns and cities had begun holding springtime tributes to the countless fallen soldiers by decorating their graves with flags and flowers and reciting prayers. Memorial Day, as decoration gradually became to be known, originally honored those lost in the Civil War. But during World War I, the United States found itself embroiled in yet another major conflict. And the holiday evolved to commemorate American military personnel who died in all wars. Later, the custom was extended to pay tribute to deceased friends and relatives, both military and civilian. And it became a national holiday, a federal holiday in 1971. Many Americans observe Memorial Day by visiting cemeteries or memorials, by holding family gatherings and participating in parades, hosting military personnel and members of veterans organizations. Some folks wear a red poppy on Memorial Day in remembrance of those fallen in war. The Remembrance Day symbolism of the poppy started with a poem written by a World War I brigade surgeon who was struck by the sight of the red flowers growing on the ravaged battlefield. From 1914 to 1918, World War I took a greater human toll than any previous conflict. Some 8.5 million soldiers dead of battlefield injuries or disease. The Great War, as it was then known, also ravaged the landscape of Western Europe, where most of the fierce fighting took place. From the devastated landscape of the battlefields, the red poppy would grow. And thanks to a famous poem, the poppy became a powerful symbol of remembrance. Across northern France and Flanders, the brutal clashes between Allied and Axis forces tore up the fields and the forests, wreaking havoc on the soil below. If you've ever seen the pictures of the areas after those battles, you would see it's absolutely devastated, war-torn. I just watched a movie last week called They Shall Not Grow Old. And it's all World War I footage, actual footage. About the first half hour of it or so, it's just real fast, like the film was back then and everything. But at about after a half hour, they slow it down and they colorize it, if that's the right word. They add color to it. And then it's just all veterans just telling their stories all the way through it. It's rated R, not because it's dirty cussing or anything like that, but just lots of bodies. You want to see something that opens up your appreciation for what people did. Appreciation for liberating the world from tyrants. Trying to bring peace where there is none. You watch a movie like that, I tell you what, it'll change you. They Shall Not Grow Old is the name of it. Shortly after all the terror and destruction of that battle, in the warm early spring of 1915, bright red flowers began peeking through the battle-scarred land. I'm telling you, folks, there's nothing left. Trees are just sticks pointing up. It is just amazing. Wow. Lieutenant Colonel John McCrae, who served as a brigade surgeon for Allied artillery units, spotted a cluster of poppies that spring and shortly after the Second Battle of Ypres. McCrae tended to the wounded and he got a first-hand look at the carnage of that clash in which the Germans unleashed lethal chlorine gas for the first time in the war. Some 87,000 Allied soldiers were killed, wounded, or went missing in that battle, as well as 37,000 on the German side. A friend of McCrae, Lieutenant Alex Helmer, was among the dead. Struck by the sight of the bright red blooms on broken ground, McCrae wrote a poem, In Flanders Field, in which he channeled the voices of the fallen soldiers buried under those hardy poppies. Published in Punch magazine in late 1915, the poem would be used at countless memorial ceremonies and became one of the most famous works of art ever to emerge from the Great War. By the time McCrae died from pneumonia and meningitis in January 1918, the fame of the poem had spread far and wide. In Flanders Field by John McCrae. In Flanders Field the poppies blow, between the crosses, row on row, that mark our place, and in the sky the larks still bravely singing fly, scarce heard amid the guns below. We are the dead. Short days ago we lived, felt dawn, saw sunset glow, loved and were loved, and now we lie in Flanders Field. Take up our quarrel with the foe, to you from failing hands we throw, the torch be yours to hold it high. If ye break faith with us who die, we shall not sleep, though poppies grow in Flanders Field. In New York, November 1918, 2 days before the armistice, which is the end of World War I, an American woman named Moina Michael came across the poem In Flanders Field by John McCrae. She was so moved that she made a personal pledge to keep the faith. She felt compelled to take a note of this pledge and hastily scribbled down a response entitled, "We shall keep the faith," on the back of a used envelope. From that day she vowed to wear a red poppy of Flanders Field as a sign of remembrance. This is her poem, 1918. "O you who sleep in Flanders Field, sleep sweet to rise anew. We caught the torch you threw, and holding high, we keep the faith of all who died. We cherish too the poppy red that grows on fields where valor led. It seems to signal to the skies that the blood of heroes never dies, but lends its luster to the red of the flower that blooms above the dead in Flanders Fields. Now the torch and the poppy red we wear in honor of our dead. Fear not that ye have died for naught, we'll teach the lessons that you wrought in Flanders Field." Sad thing is, folks, I think many today are forgetting the lessons that were wrought, the sacrifices that were made. So easy to brush off and just not ever think about it again. The National Legion voted to use the poppy as the official U.S. national emblem of remembrance when its members convened in Cleveland, September 1920. Americans don't typically wear poppies on November 11th, which is Veterans Day, which honors all living veterans. Instead, they wear the symbolic red flower on Memorial Day, the last Monday in May, to commemorate the sacrifice of so many men and women who have given their lives fighting for their country. November 1918, World War I, both Allies and Central Powers who had been battering each other for 4 years were pretty much well spent. If you watch this show that I just talked about, that was kind of the common thing. They're like, what are we even fighting for? What are we even doing this for? I mean, the guns is just constant boom, 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 boom. I gotta go get me a Kleenex. Intermission time, I'm sorry. Okay, so they were pretty much well spent, kind of at the end of the rope. German offenses that year had been defeated with heavy casualties. And in late summer and fall, the British and French and U.S. forces had pushed them steadily back. With the United States able to send more and more fresh troops into combat, the Germans were outmatched. As Germany's allies crumbled around them, the war's outcome seemed clear. On the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month, 1918, the incessant, constant boom of artillery abruptly went silent. Stanhope Bain Jones, an American medical officer, suddenly could hear water dripping off the bush next to him. Think of the years of intense noise, earth shaking, ears ringing, to all of a sudden just go totally silent, to now be able to hear a drip off a leaf. How strangely beautiful that must have sounded. Jones said, I quote, "It seemed mysterious, queer, unbelievable. All of the men knew what the silence meant, but nobody shouted or threw his hat in the air." Unquote. It took hours for the reality to sink in. World War I, the bloodiest conflict so far in human history, with more than 8.5 million military dead, 21 million more wounded, had finally ended. Put yourself in those soldiers' place. Watching that movie, it's just, yeah, you just have to watch it. Your friends, you're talking to them, and boom, they're just gone, head blown off. The constant, just constant, boom, 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 constant. So you didn't even know. You didn't know if you were the next that a bomb was going to land on, or if your head was going to get blown off. And they lived this. These trenches, water that deep in the wintertime. They'd wake up in the morning and their boots are froze to their feet. Froze to their feet. They show pictures of them. It's like just living in slosh. You can't go up because you're going to get shot. Rats all over. The smell. Walking on bodies pushed in the murk. And they say they come back to they come back home from the war. They said, you cannot relate. Nobody knows. The only people you can relate to are your comrades. They're the only people you can talk to, so nobody talked about it. Moms or dads or business workers, you come back to the job, hey, thanks for all you're doing over there. Really, you did a good job, guys. Well, thank you. There's just no connection whatsoever. Because you cannot understand the cost of it until you've actually been there and experienced it. I take my hat off to veterans, love them, each and every one of them for what they've done. But there's no way I can experience. God bless them. Can you imagine the years of fighting with near constant rifle fire, cannons, and bombs going off all around you? The bodies of comrades being blown up and torn from limb to limb, laying lifelessly on foreign soil. The uncertainty and wondering if you'll be the next to die. Not knowing if you'll ever make it back home to the other side of the world to see your family again. Death and destruction all around you. The land turned black because of bomb and artillery craters being blown into it. Trees with no leaves or branches left on them. Just sticks poking out of the ground. Horses, cattle, sheep, goats, pigs, dogs, cats, all lay dead. Homes, buildings of business, houses of worship, dislodged from their foundations, burned, war-torn, uninhabitable. Civilians hungry, bewildered, sick, wounded, dead. That's what a war machine looks like. It's not pretty. War is very brutal and ugly. But do you know what's worse than war? Being a prisoner in what was once your own land. That's why we go. We go to liberate. We go to keep safety. How would you feel if there were just armed bandits not letting you do what you want? You'd fight. That's what this country did. She fought. That's what the Allied forces did. They fought. Be a prisoner in your own country, not being allowed the opportunity to grow, to dream, to thrive, to live free. All because of an ungodly ruler who has their own prideful, selfish, ruthless goals in mind and not the best interests of his people. It's always a ruthless, ungodly enemy, by the way, that wants to come and steal, kill, and destroy. Isn't that what Jesus said of the devil? John 10:10, comes to steal, kill, destroy. We as Americans didn't start World War I. We didn't get involved until the German submarines sank passenger and cargo ships. Nor did we get into World War II by wanting to take over other people's country and possessions. December 7, 1941. Japan landed 6 carrier groups, the largest ever assembled within 300 miles of Oahu, Hawaii. They unleashed a surprise attack and blindsided America by bombing Pearl Harbor. They wanted to establish a beachhead, folks, because they were coming for the homeland. They were coming for your country. They were coming for your grandpa's farm. We didn't bomb Japan first. They bombed us. On June 6, 1944, Americans landed on the French beaches of Normandy to help liberate a captive people from the ruthless iron grip of Hitler's Nazi killing machine. His regime ruthlessly slaughtered millions of defenseless people. I remember Tasha, my girl, she went to saw the Holocaust Museum in Washington. And she said that was by far the best thing she saw in Washington, the most moving. She said the hardest thing for me was in the Holocaust Museum, they had this like a glass panel, just a big room. It was all full of shoes. Shoes of people that Hitler killed. Isn't that something? What do they say? If you forget history, you're apt to repeat it again. That's why you see a poppy. War in all its horror is a terrible necessity at times to keep tyrants and evil from consuming the world. Edmund Burke said the only thing necessary for the triumph of evil is for good men to sit back and do nothing. Unless man allows himself to be governed by the goodness of God, he will never be satisfied with what he has, and he will always seek to take from someone else. The war in Europe had concluded when Germany signed its instrument of surrender on May 8, 1945, and Hitler's war machine had been defeated. As the Allies turned their full attention to the Pacific theater, they called for an unconditional surrender of the Imperial Japanese Armed Forces in the Potsdam Declaration, July 6, 1945. The alternative being, quote, prompt and utter destruction. Japan ignored the ultimatum, and the war continued. The U.S. was in the process of securing lands around Japan to establish bases for airfields for a possible future invasion of the Japanese Empire mainland. There were a number of battle wages in the Pacific theater, such as the Battle of Iwo Jima. It was a major battle in which the United States Marine Corps landed on and eventually captured the island from the Imperial Japanese Army. The American invasion, designated Operation Detachment, had the goal of capturing the entire island, including 3 Japanese-controlled airfields, to provide a staging area for attacks on the Japanese mainland. This 5-week battle comprised some of the most fiercest and bloodiest fighting in the Pacific of World War II. That's where the famous picture of the six Marines putting up the flag was taken. Don't you just love looking at stuff like that? Man, it just moves me. 3 of those men were killed days later. Think about that. 3 of them gone. The Battle of Luzon, fought January 9 to August 15, 1945, was a land battle of the Pacific Theater of Operations in World War II by the Allied forces of the U.S. against forces of the Empire of Japan. The battle resulted in a U.S. and Allied victory. The Allies took control of all strategically and economically important locations of Luzon. While not its highest in U.S. casualties, it is its highest net casualty battle the U.S. forces fought in World War II. With 200,000 Japanese combatants dead, 130,000 Filipino, 10,000 Americans. My dad told me stories. He was in the Battle of Luzon. He told me stories. He was a sergeant. I just went over and visited his grave this morning on the way over here. And he said he remembered, being in the foxholes. And at night, the Japanese would be dropping paratroopers in. So the Navy would sit a ways offshore out there, and they'd just light her up. Just dancing right through the treetops, all over the place. And then about every fifth round was a tracer round, so it lights the sky. He said it was like daytime at night. Can you imagine that? Wow. He said it wasn't super bad when all that was going on, when all the racket was going on and the commotion. And he said it got kind of the scariest, if you would call it that. You really do rise up to an occasion. From the way I understand these guys talking and the testimonies I heard on that show and listened to my dad, you really do have something inside you that can stand up to a lot and take a lot. But he said if there was a scary time, if you could call it that, would be at night, after the guns went quiet. The Japanese planes weren't dropping any more paratroopers. He says, because some of them made it through. Just sitting in your foxhole. In the Battle of Okinawa, the United States Army and Marine Corps troops fought a long and bloody battle to catch Okinawa so it could be used as a major Air Force troop base for the planned invasion of Japan. During this battle, about 95,000 Imperial Japanese Army troops and 12,510 Americans were killed. Okinawa has been a critical staging base location since the end of World War II until this very day, with about 26,000 troops residing there. U.S. bases in Okinawa played critical roles in the Korean War, Vietnam War, war in Afghanistan, Iraqi War. In the final year of World War II, the Allies prepared for what was anticipated to be a very costly invasion of the Japanese mainland. This undertaking was preceded by a conventional firebombing campaign that devastated 67 Japanese cities. By August 1945, the Allies' Manhattan Project had produced 2 types of atomic bombs, and the 509th Composite Group of the United States Army Air Force was equipped with specialized silver-plate version of the Boeing B-29 Super Fortress that could deliver them from the Manila Islands. The U.S. dropped 70 million leaflets. Most people don't know this. 70 million leaflets informing Japan that they were about to drop a bomb bigger than anything they had done before on the cities which were crucial to Japan's militaries, and that they better surrender or get your people out, because these cities aren't going to fare well. Did you ever hear that before? All you hear about is big bad America all the time. Yeah. Orders for atomic bombs to be used on 4 Japanese cities were issued on July 25th. On August 6th, one of the modified B-29s dropped a uranium gun-type little boy bomb on Hiroshima, where it was housed a sizable military garrison. 3 days later, on August 29th, the plutonium implosion Fat Man bomb was dropped by another B-29 on Nagasaki. The bombs immediately devastated their target. And you know what, folks? Even when they were doing this, we were kind of unsure about things. We really didn't even know how these things were going to work, if they were really going to work or not. But on August 15th, 1945, 6 days after the bombing on Nagasaki, Japan announced its surrender to the Allies. On September 2nd, 1945, Tokyo Bay, Japan, on the deck of the battleship Missouri, the Japanese government signed its instrument of surrender, which effectively ended World War II. I like that. They just pull that old ship right into Tokyo Bay. Right in your backyard. We didn't start this thing, but we're finishing it.
You know what, Frank? We didn't take over their country.
And we didn't take over their country, Dennis. Thank you. That's exactly right. That's what this country's about. We weren't coming for their country. They were coming for ours. Wayne.
And this country now is an ally of theirs.
That's exactly right. Japan's our ally.
We forgave them of what happened back
Yeah.
then and took them in as a friend.
Exactly. We took them in as a friend. It took a while for people to get over it. I mean, anything made in Japan, I remember the old folks didn't want nothing to do with it because there was a lot of bitterness there. But anyway, we forgave them. Now they're our ally. That's exactly right. I could hand this thing over and just let you guys go. We will do that sometime. Yeah. Dennis says, you don't want that. Oh, yeah. You know, I wonder what life would have been like now if we hadn't dropped the bomb on Hiroshima or Nagasaki. Tens of thousands of Japanese people died. That's true. Absolutely. But they estimate that if we had not dropped the bomb, that 1 million American soldiers would have lost their lives. And far more Japanese civilians had we invaded their homeland to end this war. I wonder if that had happened, which one of us would actually be here now? My dad was parked right there. Luzon, Okinawa, they're right there. They were lining them up. That's why they were securing these airstrips for an invasion into Japan if this other secret bomb didn't work. Would I even be here now? Who knows? Isn't that something? It's easy to say we shouldn't have done what we did. But remember this, again, we didn't start it. We have awakened a sleeping giant and filled him with terrible resolve. Their own commander said, Japanese Yamamoto. The most solemn, thank you, ceremony conducted on Memorial Day is by placing a wreath at the tomb of the unknown soldier, located in Arlington National Cemetery. On one of the sides of this monument, it is described, "Here rests in honored glory an American soldier known only to God." The tomb guards are soldiers of the U.S. Army. It's considered one of the highest honors to serve as a sentinel at the Tomb of the Unknowns. Fewer than 20% of all volunteers are accepted for training, and of those, only a fraction pass the training to become full-fledged tomb guards and receive the Honor Guard Tomb of the Unknown Soldier Identification Badge. It is a military badge of the United States Army which honors those soldiers which have been chosen to serve as members of the Honor Guard. It is the second least awarded badge in the U.S. military, only after the astronaut badge. Since its establishment on February 7, 1958, only 660-some soldiers have been awarded this badge. It's the only badge that the military, the only military badge that is can be revoked for any action that brings disrespect to the tomb during the lifetime of the tomb guard. The soldier walking the mat does not wear a rank insignia so as not to outrank the unknowns, whichever their ranks may have been. The guard is changed every hour in the winter and every half hour in the summer. The guard takes 21 steps stops, takes a crisp 90-degree turn, pauses 21 seconds, takes another 90-degree turn, pauses another 21 seconds, and then places his weapon on the shoulder closest to the visitors, signifying the tomb is always protected. Isn't that cool? Man, that just makes the hair stand on the back of my neck. The duties of the Sentinel are not purely ceremonial. The Sentinels will confront people who cross the barriers at the tomb or whom they perceive to be disrespectful or excessively loud. I've witnessed that personally, the changing of the guard. I tell you what, it is somber. Dar, have you ever been there and seen that? Man, that is something you should do. It's just dead quiet. All you hear is the clicks of his feet. Just somber. The first 24-hour guard was posted on midnight, July 2nd, 1937. The tomb of the unknowns has been guarded continuously, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week since that time. There has not been 1 minute that there has not been a guard in front of the tomb of the unknowns. Isn't that something? These guys, you ought to see what these guys go through to do this. Just look up training of the tomb of the unknowns, the guards. You won't believe it. It's incredible. I don't got time to tell you, so you just got to go look it up for yourself. Inclement weather, terrorist attacks, nor anything else has caused the watch ever to cease. Just thinking in the back of my head, in this environment, I wonder what will happen in the future. From Jamestown to Plymouth, the American Revolutionary War struggle for independence from the war to end all wars to the present actions of today across the globe. Millions have laid down their lives, folks, to make us free. Millions have. There is one day a year that we set aside to honor and memorialize them. The end of May, we celebrate that day. Many people see it as just a day off, a 3-day weekend, a reason to cook out and invite friends over, and that's fine, that's good, do all that. But remember the poppy. Remember the freedoms afforded to you by somebody else's sacrifice. But for those who have lost someone because of war or military action, it means much more than a day off. In fact, every American ought to recognize this day and to honor those who gave their lives to make America what it is today. America's free. America's strong. America is a nation worth fighting for, folks. Because men and women have died for this country, we take the privilege to preach God's word freely, in peace. We have the privilege. We have the privilege to pursue peace, prosperity, and happiness. We need to thank God for those who died to make us free. On Memorial Day, we mourn the loss of families disrupted, marriages ended, occupations destroyed, dreams not realized, all because somebody didn't come home. Lives cut short because of sacrifice. The empty place left in a mother's heart after 2 soldiers come to her door is still painfully deep and wide. Time can somewhat dull the pain, but the memories are forever etched in her mind of her son or daughter not coming back. Eventually, tears of sadness can turn to tears of joy as we reflect on the memories of everything that made that person special. Some may think, I can't believe Frank took an entire service to talk about war and soldiers. But let me tell you what, my dear friends. It is because of those soldiers that you and I are able to gather in our nice churches, openly hear the preaching of God's Word, enjoy our barbecues, having friends over. Without their sacrifice, we would quite probably, if we were even still alive, be meeting in an underground room, fearing for our lives as we from memory quoted Scripture to each other. Are we really thankful for that sacrifice? Got to ask yourself. Freedom always costs somebody something. Always. There is no such thing as freedom without cost. Free to you, somebody had to pay. As we remember those who have died for our country to purchase our physical freedom, it is also obviously very important to remember another one that died to purchase our spiritual freedom 2,000 years ago. That battle was fought on a hill called Calvary by an individual that fought selflessly, valiantly, victoriously. Jesus Christ willingly left the comforts, known comforts, subjecting himself to extreme pain and anguish, all to obtain freedom for a people that without his help were without hope. You and I are without hope, the Bible says. Without Jesus Christ in your life, you are without hope. That hopeless person is you and I that he came to save. Just as the people in those small European towns and villages were totally helpless and without hope as they watched the German war machine entering their cities and homes, so too was mankind without strength to overcome the enemy Satan on his own, on our own. Those citizens may have heard the help was coming, but how do you think they felt when they saw the soldiers coming over the hill? What a feeling of relief that must have been. Jesus battled the armies of hell and prevailed so that we might have liberty in his name. Just as we should appreciate and celebrate the freedoms that we have in this country every day, so should we also be eternally grateful for what Christ has done for us and not make it a priority just once a week.
Amen.
Thank you, Dean. That's right. Every day is Memorial Day for a Christian. You know that if there was only one sinner, Jesus would have came and gave his life for you. That's pretty incredible. His love is that great. So on Memorial Day, we remember the lives. The headstones we place on graves are a point of contact to cause us to pause and remember and appreciate the loved one that was lost. I encourage you to do that. Go visit your loved one's grave this Memorial Day. Part of the emotional healing is to remember the life of the one who's passed. Almost done here, folks. You doing good? On Memorial Day, we mourn the loss, we remember the lives, and we're thankful for the sacrifice. All the heroic acts done on the battlefields throughout history have made our country what it is today, folks. We're wealthy, we're blessed, we are free. I'm proud to be an American. She's the envy of the world. If you don't like it here, I can guarantee you there are a billion people that'll take your place. Just leave. She's a beautiful country. The very ones out doing all the protesting and everything are there, have that right because of what these guys did. Man, don't shoot holes in your own boat, folks. Where are you going to go? If not America, where are you going to go? What is good enough for you? She ain't perfect, man. It's just people, made of people. But we just do our best. We'll try to do better. Don't hate anybody. Don't want to see bad, evil come to anybody. Let's just get along. Let's just get along. Just look to the Lord. How much nicer to get along than to fight? We have this luxury of freedom because men and women have died to purchase it. It didn't just happen, folks. Similarly, the price that Jesus paid affords us salvation. We have the promise of salvation, and we didn't do anything to obtain it. All we can do is accept it. Jesus Christ obtained it. He's the one that fought the battle on Calvary. For this we must be thankful. Closing up here. Deuteronomy 32 verse 7 says, remember the days of old. Consider the years of many generations. Ask your father, and he will show you, and your elders, and they will tell you. The youth have not seen all that the elders have seen, all their dads or grandpas have seen. That's why the stories must be told them over and over again, lest time diminishes their relevance and importance. Romans 13:7 says, Render therefore to all their dues, tribute to whom tribute is due, custom to whom custom is due, fear to whom fear is due, honor to whom honor is due. So it's our duty to pay tribute and honor those who have put their lives on the line for the principles we hold dear, folks. Our American service personnel have made us free, and for this, we must be eternally thankful. Amen. I'm sorry I preached that last year, but there was some different stuff in there. But was it okay this time too? Yes. Thank you. God bless you guys. I love it when kids say yes. That's just it. You got to rehearse these things, because there's talk of trying to remove stuff like this from schools. You know? So appreciate what everybody's done for this country.